Hello, and welcome to Christ Lutheran Church's first video looking at the third article of the Creed. Do you know what FOMO is? It's a social media term. It stands for the fear of missing out. When we see someone on social media posting about a good time that they are having at some place where we are not, we get anxious, and it can lead us to make some really poor decisions because we're afraid that there's something going on that we are missing out on. The real FOMO that we should have is the fear of missing out on God, especially when you look at what happened in Bible history when people were missing out on God. One of the biggest events to take place in the Bible, an event that is referenced for a lot of the Bible after it took place, is the Exodus from Egypt. Do you remember that? How the Israelites were in slavery in Egypt, but God provided a way out for them so that they could be his chosen nation? God promised that he would bring them back to their land, the land of Canaan. And so the Israelites wandered for many years through the wilderness before making it to Canaan. And what did they find when they got there? The Israelites found that there were a bunch of people living in Canaan, standing in their way of being the nation that lived in the land. So what did God do about it? God gave the Israelites the ability to destroy the people living there, the people called the Canaanites. Many, many Canaanites died so that the Israelites could live in the promised land. That might sound pretty horrible, all those people dying. But what you might not know about is just how sinful those people were. These weren't just your run-of-the-mill sinners. They weren't just struggling with anger, pride, lust, and greed. No, these people were doing things like sacrificing their children. Yes, letting their children die in their religious rituals dedicated to false gods. Some of their religious practices also included engaging in sexual activity at their religious temples, being intimate with people who weren't their spouses, so that they could feel like they were having some sort of experience with the divine simply because of the pleasure of sex in a religious building. Not only was this stuff weird, it was also incredibly sinful. It was dangerous, harmful, disrespectful of God, and disrespectful of human life. These people were incredibly sinful, clearing them out so that the Israelites could have the land that God always planned to be for them. It makes a lot more sense when you know just how sinful the Canaanites were. So the question is, how did it get so bad in Canaan? How did these people end up doing such atrocious things? It's because they had let go of God. They had decided to live life the way they wanted, totally apart from any instruction from God. They wandered so far from God that their behavior was just so obviously evil. They were missing out on God, and as a result, it got very, very bad for everyone involved. We also see this take place in the Bible, not with a nation, but with individuals. Think about Adam and Eve. They were with God in a way that we can only imagine. They had God with them, but then they chose to disobey God, to go their own way, to wander. And what happened when they first sinned? They immediately had everything fall apart. They felt afraid and ashamed. They didn't want to be near God. They had become such fools to think that they could hide from God. They started blaming each other for sinning. Not just their relationship with God, but also their relationship with each other was falling apart. All of this is what it's like to not have God. Eventually, you are left not only feeling rotten, but you're also walking on a path further and further away from God. In the next video, we will start looking at the third article of the Creed. But for now, let's look at what Martin Luther wrote at the beginning of his explanation of this third article. Luther wrote, "I believe that I cannot by my own thinking or choosing believe in Jesus Christ, my Lord, or come to him. On our own, we are missing out on everything that's truly good, because on our own, we are missing out on God. We come into this world not having God, but rather having sinfulness that we engage in with our sin and that we inherit from our sinful parents, who inherited it from their parents, and so on." This is pretty bleak, but important to know. This way, when we get to the next video, we will appreciate the help that God gives to us. Help that God gives to people who come into the world as lost as this. Trust me, it gets better. Here is the home activity. Read Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 32. What this is really a big, bad list of sins. And here are some questions to ask yourself. Which sin in these verses seems to you like the most sinful one? And which seems like the least sinful one? And why do you think that they are all listed together? See you next time. God bless.